Hello, I'm Suzanne of Luna Yoga. This is an energizing practice that can be done first thing in the morning or anytime throughout the day when you'd like to feel energized. It's set to the beautiful backdrop of Playa del Carmen in Mexico, and I hope you enjoy. Please come to the front of your mat and find a seated position that's comfortable for you. You can be cross-legged. You can sit in Vajrasana, Thunderbolt pose with your shins and knees touching, resting on your heels. You can sit up on a block if that feels nice, or even sit on a pillow to raise your hips higher than your knees. Find your comfortable seat and settle in. You can gently close down your eyes, either 3/4 of the way or all the way closed. And begin to notice your breath. Drop in to your experience here and present yourself to your yoga practice. Bring your awareness to your heart center. And on your next inhale, feel your heart center open and expand. Sense the energy emanating from your heart center, expanding on your inhale. I invite you to connect now to your Ujjayi breath, victorious breath, making a light constriction in your throat on the inhale and exhale to produce an audible sound that sounds a bit like an ocean wave. I invite you to connect with your Ujjayi breath throughout the practice. Maintaining the Ujjayi breath is great for staying centered and connecting the mind and body. On your next inhale, come onto your hands and knees. Stack your wrists below your shoulders and your knees below your hips. We'll take a few rounds of cat and cow. On an inhale, sink your low belly. Lift your hips up, gaze upward. Exhale, press the earth away from you. Arch through your spine, gaze through your thighs for cat pose. Inhale, cow belly, sink your low belly, open your chest, gaze upward. Exhale, lift up through your back. Make a rainbow shape with your spine, gaze through your thighs. Move through a few more rounds, syncing your breath to your movement. Inhale for a cow belly. Exhale for angry cat. And feel free to color outside the lines. Take any additional movements that feel nice to you here. You might take some circles with your hips. Just tune in with your body. You can tuck your toes under and see how that feels. Yoga involves a component of self-study. So I invite you to engage in self-study. Check in with yourself and notice what's going on for you, what feels nice for you, what feels like what you need to do. On your next inhale, come back to a neutral spine. Tuck your toes under and lift your hips up and back for downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Bend through your left foot, straightening out your right knee. Switch, bend your left knee, straighten out through your opposite leg. Walking out your feet. Bend both knees, lift your hips up even higher, and gently sink your heels back toward the mat. Gaze through your thighs. Gaze toward the front of your mat. Step toward the front of your mat. Take as many steps as you need to get here. And when you arrive, forward fold, Uttanasana. Hinge at your hips. You can let your neck relax here. Shake your head yes and no. Inhale, halfway lift. Bring your fingertips to your shins, to blocks, or to the mat. Straightening out through your back, lengthening through your spine. Broaden your collarbones. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, engage your thighs and slowly roll all the way up to standing. When you arrive at the top of your mat, roll your shoulders up and back and float your arms up overhead. Gaze upward. Exhale, hinge at your hips, forward fold. Inhale, halfway rise, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, forward fold, Uttanasana. Inhale, place your fingertips on the mat, step back into plank. In your plank pose, imagine energetically twisting open pickle jars to help engage your upper arms. Squeeze your legs and glutes, tone your low belly, and slowly sink down halfway or less for Chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog or baby cobra. Exhale, downward facing dog. Stay here for 5 breaths. Remember your Ujjayi breath. Gaze toward the front of your mat. Step with your opposite foot to the front of the mat. Forward fold, Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, put a slight bend in your knees, rise to standing. Float your arms up overhead. Exhale, hinge at your hips, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, place your fingertips on the mat, step back into plank. Lower down halfway or less, or all the way to the mat. I'll show you the modification. Lengthen your toes long behind you. Keep your pelvic bone rooted into the mat and lift up for cobra or upward facing dog. Exhale, tuck your toes or float over your toes into downward facing dog. Keep spiraling your hands outward energetically. Bring the eyes of your elbows forward. Wrap your biceps under for Adho Mukha Svanasana. Gaze toward the front of your mat. Step to the front of your mat. Uttanasana, forward fold. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, rise to standing. Interlock your last 3 fingers. Leave your index and thumb fingers pointing upward. Inhale for length. Exhale over, arch over to the right. Bump your hips out to the left. Keep lengthening your tailbone downward. Tone your low belly. Gaze upward. Keep spiraling your left ribs up. Inhale, find length. Exhale, deepen your side bend just a little bit. One more time. Inhale, find length. Exhale, deepen the side bend. Inhale, rise to standing. Exhale, arch over to your left. Bump your hips out to the right. Inhale, find a little bit of length. Exhale, deepen the bend. Inhale for length. Exhale, bend to the side. Inhale, rise back up to standing. And bring your hands to your low back, either with your fingers pointing up, out to the side, or down. Inhale, lengthen through your spine, root strongly through your feet. And on your exhale, offer your hips forward and your chest upward for a standing back bend. If you feel any compression in your low back, come up a little bit. Inhale, rise to standing. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, bring your fingertips to the mat. Step your right foot to the back of the mat. Bring your right hand either to a block or to the mat. And open, twist toward your left. Twist from the core. Lead with the core, not the shoulder. And gaze upward. Exhale, bring your left hand to frame your left foot. Step your left foot back into plank and flow through your vinyasa. Lower halfway down or less for chaturanga or all the way down to the mat. Take your back bend of choice, either baby cobra or upward facing dog. Tone your low belly and your back bend. And lift your hips up into downward facing dog. Inhale, float your right foot up. Exhale, place your right foot between your hands. Bring your left fingertips either to a block or to the mat. Inhale, twist open toward your right. Twist from your core and gaze upward toward your right fingertips. Exhale, bring your right hand to frame your right foot. Press the earth away from you, lift your hips just a little bit, and step your right foot back to meet your left in plank. Flow through your vinyasa, lower down halfway or less for chaturanga, or all the way to the mat. Bhujangasana, baby cobra, or upward facing dog, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Exhale, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Deep breath here, connect to your Ujjayi breath. Walk your hands toward the middle of your mat. Step your feet toward the middle of your mat. Walk your hands back. Step your feet up. Feet are about hips distance apart. Lift up your right toes and bring your right hand under your right foot with your fingers pointing toward your heel, and bring your toes to your wrist crease. Same thing on the left. Lift up your left toes. Thread your left hand under your foot, bringing your toes to your wrist crease. Inhale, lengthen through your spine. Exhale, bend your elbows for gorilla pose. Keep lifting up through your hips, tone your quads. Inhale, lift one foot up and then the next, removing your hands from underneath you. Come onto the toes of your feet and sink your hips down for a toe stand. Option to hover your hips just a few inches off your heels and bring your hands to heart center or overhead to challenge your balance. Exhale, place your hands on the mat, float your hips upward, forward fold Uttanasana. Bring your toes to touch and your heels slightly apart. Sink your hips down toward knee level. Bring your hands to heart center for Utkatasana, fierce pose. For extra heat, you can stretch your arms longest beside your ears. Float onto your toes, lift your heels off the mat. Exhale, lower your heels down, bring your fingertips to the mat, and step your feet out a little bit wider, coming into crow pose, Bakasana. Energetically spiral your hands outward, think about the pickle jars. Rise up onto your toes or place a block under your toes and go from on top of a block. Bend your elbows, snuggle your knees in on top of your arms, and slowly float one foot and then the next. Once you're here, you can straighten out through your elbows a little bit. Keep lifting through your upper back and your ribs. Gently bring your feet back down to the mat. Sit your hips down onto the mat. Bring your knees together for Navasana, boat pose. Your knees can be bent with your hands gently holding on behind your knees, or you can straighten out your legs for Navasana, boat pose. Keep tone to your low belly, whole core, broaden through your collarbones. One more breath here. On an exhale, lift back up onto your toes. Bring your toes to touch, heels slightly apart. Lift your hips up into chair pose. One more time, bring your hands to the mat energetically. Think of the pickle jars. Come onto your toes. For crow pose, kakasana, bring your knees to the upper arms. Lift one foot and then the next off the mat. Slowly lower your feet down, lower your hips down for boat pose. Hands can either rest behind the knees, or you can float your arms overhead. Exhale, bring your feet to the mat, press up to a squat. Bring your toes to touch, heels slightly apart. Lift your hips up into chair pose. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, rise to standing. Lift your arms overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Bring your fingertips to the mat. Step back into downward facing dog. Inhale, float your right leg up. Exhale, bring your right foot between your hands. Rise up to crescent lunge. Keep squeezing your inner thighs together for balance. Bring your hand to heart center. Shift your torso forward and then twist open toward your right and bring your left elbow on top of your right thigh. Twist from the core. Inhale, find length. Exhale, deepen your twist. Option to open your arms into an open arm twist or keep them at heart center. From here, inhale, find a little bit of buoyancy in your hips. Step your left foot to meet the right in chair pose. Twisted chair pose. Inhale to center. Exhale, twist open to the left. Twisted chair on the left. Check that your right knee is not sneaking forward. If it is, pull it back in line with your left. Twist from your core. Inhale, find length through your spine. Exhale, deepen your twist. From here, gently and with control, step your right foot back into a twisted lunge. Option again to open your arms for an open arm twist or keep them at heart center. Keep pressing your hands into each other to deepen your twist. Exhale, bring your hands to frame your left foot. Lower your right knee down to the mat and straighten out through your left leg for Ardha Uttanasana half splits. Keep pulling your left heel in toward your body. Plug your left thigh into your hip socket. Inhale, bring the sole of your left foot to meet the mat. Shift your hips forward. for Anjaneyasana, low lunge variation. Option for more heat to float your right knees or bring them down to a mat. You can even, if you want a deeper stretch through your right hip flexor, come to put a block under your left foot. Option to take a quad stretch by lifting your left arm up and back to meet your right foot. First, pull your right foot to your glute, then sink your hips down. With control, without ricocheting, gently release your right foot. Bring your left hand to frame your left foot. Float your right knees up. Step back into plank and flow through your vinyasa. Option to have your knees up or lower to the mat. Lower halfway down or less for chaturanga. Inhale for cobra or upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale your right leg up. Exhale, bring your right foot between your hands. Gently lower your left knee down to the mat. Or keep it lifted, it's up to you. For a low lunge variation, you can bring your hands on top of your right knee or lift your hands overhead. Exhale, bring your right hand to frame your right foot or bring your hands on top of blocks. Straighten out through your right leg and pull your right thigh into your hip socket. One more time, bring the sole of your right foot to the mat. For Anjaneyasana, low lunge variation. Exhale, find Ardha Hanumanasana, half splits. Bring the sole of your right foot to the mat. Option for a quad stretch. Float your right arm up and back to meet your left foot. Pull your left foot to your glute first, then sink your hips down. Gaze upward. Gently release your left foot. Bring your right hand to frame your right foot. Float your left knees. Step back into downward facing dog. Shift your weight forward into plank pose. Lower all the way down to the mat. Lengthen your toes out behind you. And bring your forearms on the mat underneath you in Sphinx pose. If you'd like a deeper back bend, you can walk your fingertips forward for seal pose. Begin to slow your breath. Bring your heart rate down. Inhale, tuck your toes. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Sit back in child's pose. Rest your forehead on the mat. You can have your knees wide apart or together, whatever you prefer. Gently rise up to Vajrasana, thunderbolt pose, sitting on your heels with your knees together. You can have a block underneath your sits bones here. And we'll finish this short practice with 3 ohms, connecting to the sound vibrations and frequencies of Om. You can bring your hands to heart center or leave them resting on your thighs. Inhale. And I invite you to join me in 3 ohms. Om. 2. Om. 3. 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 with your eyes closed and your hands at heart center. Experience gratitude to yourself for the opportunity to practice together, for this day, and for this experience. If there's any word you'd like to close your practice with, you can say that now. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you soon.